Hello everyone, this is Mr. 13 Things laying out a template, if you will, for the concept of why we break things up into 13 things at a time. One thing I just noticed out at a great site called memrise.com is there are 52 cards in a deck of cards, so if you divide that into 4, you get 13 things at a time as well. So what we're going to do is our example here is we're going to work through this unit circle, and I'm going to show you what I'm using right now is Smooth Draw 3.2.6. Smooth draw more or less. I've brought in a base circle underneath because this program does not have a great way to build to actually draw circles and the like, and I'm going to just kind of sketch over the top here of our circle, but starting, if you would, we're hoping at in layer here, I'm guessing that we'll call that our 0, 0 point, and we're going to remember that the unit circle, the radius of the unit circle is equal to 1. The diameter is equal to 2. The area is equal to pi square units. And the circumference, or I'm just going to say the angle, is equal to 2 pi. So as we start to build up these memories of 13 things at a time, sometimes we add some more things on top of them. So that said, if the radius is 1, if this is a location of 0, 0, you've got a point there, and a point there, and a point there, and a point there, the 4 points of the compass, if you would, that you know its coordinates. This is 1 in the x and 0 in the y. This is 0 in the x and 1 in the y. This is minus 1 in the x and 0 in the y. And this is 0 in the x. I guess I'll put it over here. I don't want to do that. Edit undo. I'm going to say 0 in the x and minus 1 in the y. So you have the ordered pairs here. So that's the starting through, but what we're going to really concentrate on is these first 13 things, and we'll talk about how we go about learning. For now, just the tangents, just to get to the point of learning the 13 things. So one thing we're going to always do when we divide up the unit circle out of road is we're going to start with there, and then we're going to start dividing in these things in half. And I'm just going to see if I can dash a line here down. That was close to half. And I'm going to dash a line here. And you'll realize what that means is you now have a point there and a point there on the circle. And you also can take a line from the 0, 0 point up through that and have a point there. So you have, in effect, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and 30 degrees. But there is then a gaping hole, if you would, right here at 15, and it's 75 degrees. And we'll see why later. A lot of people never ever learn those and have to rederive them each time, when in effect they are a relatively straightforward thing to learn for sines and cosines. Of course, right now, as we get all the way across here, we got fill that into 15, and this is 75. We also now want to fill out the rest of this. If nothing else, so we get this construct of 13 things going across the top of the fan, which later we will see we can spread out to around the entire circle, including the center here, and then quiz and test on 13 things as well. The 13 things here you'll see comes back eventually to this concept of 1 hour's rotation on the planet of 15 degrees, or pi over 12. But that said, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here, realizing there is a line of symmetry up and down. I'm going to go ahead and do that. There's a lot of lines of symmetry in here, but I'm going to kind of put this center line through there. Okay, we're going to call that line of symmetry there. So in reality, you're going to see later on, there's also a line of symmetry along here in some way, shape, or form. That's kind of, I'm going to call that a center line. And so we'll try this again. We'll go halfway, and we'll go halfway here as well. And that, of course, helps to fill us in on these angles, which, depending on how you measure them, are going to be something like 225, or 90 plus 30 is 120, depending on how you measure. But you're also going to have basically the 15 degree increments across the circle. And now we're going to see, in effect, what the tangents, we're going to now learn on the 13 things, and this is not immediately logical, but we're just trying to demonstrate the tangent of all these angles. the tangent of theta, what is it equal to? So if we go here, the first thing that you should learn is basically the tangent of 45 is 1. I'm going to cross this out now. I'm going to cross this out because now we're no longer looking at the cosine and the sine, which leads to the tangent. We're going to know that that's 1. We're going to know that that's 0. And we're going to know that effectively that's infinity or undefined. You then know the square root of 3 is way involved, if you want to think of it that way, way involved in the tangent. And you know that the tangent of something up here is going to be greater. You'll see why later. And so the tangent of that becomes the square root of 3. And down, that's at 60 degrees. At 30 degrees, it's 1 over the square root of 3 in math. Teachers and a lot of other people don't like it that way. So you know that turns out to be the square root of 3 over 3. Though in terms of memorization, 1 over the square root of 3, you start to see this idea of flipping that's possible here. 1 over 0 equals infinity. 1 over the square root of 3 equals the square root of 3 over 3. So you have what you see here, you're starting to emerge, is this symmetry. You now will then see a weird card of symmetry here that you will, whether this is from memory or from later from learning to calculate it more likely, you know that's pretty small. And you know the square root of 3 is involved. This is going to be 2 minus the square root of 3. And up here, this is 2 plus the square root of 3. Later on, you're going to see this actually approximates the angle. This is about equal to pi over 12. And this is about equal to 12 over pi. Something called a small angle approximation. You now think about the lines of symmetry, so you have these things developed, and in reality you're going to learn to kind of develop that just learning the first 1, 2, 3, and 4 of them, and then learning to do some mathematics. But for now we're learning 13 things in some sort of context, and so over here we can do this as 2 minus the square root of 3 with a negative in front of it, because the tangent's going to be negative over here if you think about it. This one is going to be the minus the square root of 3 over 3. This is going to be minus 1. And you start to see the 90 degrees. This is going to be minus the square root of 3. And this one is going to be minus 2 plus the square root of 3. Right. So later on, you'll see that this often appears to you in a different way. It appears you into the square root of 3 minus 2. But in effect, you've built, and this of course is once again 0. You've built now 13 things into some general learning pattern that matches an important concept, that is the angle of rotation basically of the Earth in about 1 hour. It's a little off from that. And we've laid out, at least tested the size of this. This is being recorded at 1280 by 720, which may in the end may or may not work when you're feeding this onto different media. So to summarize, this is what we've done. We've taken the unit circle. We've immediately sketched out, if you would, the 4 corners of it, or the north, south, east, and west, and the 0, 0 point. This has a radius, and you want to very often do that. Radius equals 1. We've used a backdrop because even with that said, my writing is not the best. But what we've done is we've divided up the first quadrant by dividing it in half and half, which determined the 60 or pi over 3 angle, the 45 or pi over 4 angle, and the 30-degree angle, which is pi over 6, or half of pi over 3, if you would. From that, we've then filled in 15 degrees and 75 degrees, and we've gone from there with the logic that the tangent of 45 degrees is 1. The tangent of 90 degrees is infinity, and the tangent of 0 is 0. We then remember the square root of 3 was involved in all of this. It becomes the square root of 3 is the tangent for 60, and 1 over the square root of 3 for 30. And in case of 15 degrees, it's a smaller number. You'll see why later. The tangent is the slope. And we know it's 2 minus the square root of 3. We'll see later where that comes from, but that's about equal to the angle, which is pi over 12, the angle expressed in radians. And 1 over 2 minus the square root of 3, you play around with the conjugate to get 2 plus the square root of 3. We then do a mirror, if you would, a symmetry, but realize that these lines are all basically negative, and so they're going to have negatives in front of them and go from there. There's 13 things. This is 13 tangents. Though very often the tangent is often expressed from minus pi over 2 to plus pi over 2. You can take these things through and think where they would be as well. Thanks for listening.